All right, welcome everyone. This is Dr. Clark, the Center for Weight Loss Success. Today on Losing Weight USA, we're going to talk a little bit about food triggers, which can sometimes lead to dietary disasters. Now, as I've mentioned multiple times, I'm not a big fan of kind of deprivation type of diets, but there may be certain triggers out there that may set you off. And the question then is, how do you avoid those, as well as then what do you do about them when they occur? Okay, and how can you improve on all of that? That's where we're really going. All right, welcome to Losing Weight USA, real-time answers to your weight loss questions. Some of a little bit of latest research, a little bit of expert advice. Gives you direct access not only to me, but you should be receiving the health tips and recipes via the membership portal. If you have questions, just type them into the chat box as we go along. We'll get to them at the end. If you think of things once we're all done, just give us a yell here at the Center for Weight Loss Success. The email is success@cfws.com. Phone number 757-873-1880. All right, very good. So let me flip these slides over. Again, we're talking about kind of food triggers, diet leading to potential dietary disasters. Let's see if we get this going. All right. Very good. So there are certainly certain situations, certain emotions, certain foods even that can flip kind of onto a feeding frenzy, so to speak. So do some of these emotions or situations really flip that switch? Do certain foods tend to just call your name? And we all tend to have our own little triggers and cravings, and everybody's a little bit different in what can set these things off. Now, when we talk about a trigger, what I'm saying is that a trigger is really something that sets in motion a course of events. Okay, so if you pull a trigger, it fires on a gun, it fires a gun. The trigger is what sets off the event right there. So is there triggers that can actually occur that triggers eating? Okay, that's what we're talking about there. And certain triggers and eating triggers really specifically tend to fall into three categories. It can be trigger foods, it can be trigger feelings, but also then kind of trigger environments or situations tend to happen. Very common. All right, flip side here. All right, so trigger foods. We'll talk about those first. Kind of foods, again, feelings, and then kind of situations or environments. All right, trigger food really is there a certain food that just sets you off? Meaning that I can't, once I have this, it's turning into an eating frenzy type of thing. Okay? And a control is kind of lost and made excessive amounts of either that food or just other foods, but there may be a certain food that actually triggered it. Now, most common trigger foods tend to be highly refined foods. So they usually are often kind of sugar or fat combinations. They can be the salty, starchy type of thing, the sweet, salty combination there. And a lot of these have to do with carbohydrate. Okay? The salt, starchy combination, especially like bread, chips, crackers, they can set things off. But you probably know exactly what I'm talking about, because often people have their own little trigger foods. Okay? And the problem there is that this trigger food can often lead to a short-term high, kind of eating like crazy, and then followed by a crash. And it really is this, in this situation, it's the food that tends to set this off. That's the real trigger out there. The old Lay's potato chip commercials, no one could eat just one. Okay, and if potato chips are your trigger, then okay, what are we going to do about that? Or if M&Ms or Oreos or Ritz crackers or whatever it is, an open container of ice cream, could they be the trigger right there? So for those individuals that this occurs, then they may truly have to avoid that trigger food completely. Now, again, I'm not a big fan of a regress here. I'm not a big fan of deprivation diets, meaning that, I can never have this. And, I can never have this. Typically, what we really want to learn is, can I have this in a small amount? be satisfied with a small amount. But there may be certain individuals who have certain trigger foods that if I have one of these, I have one M&M, it's going to set off, complete, avalanche of eating, whether it be all the M&Ms or an avalanche of eating that has triggered this, and subsequently I'm eating anything in sight, anything that's not nailed down. Okay? And for those things, you really do have to avoid those foods completely. And so if you have a true trigger food, then yes, it's kind of like a drug. Okay? It's like, okay, if someone's a drug addict, a heroin addict or whatever, it's not like, oh, I could just have a little bit and I'll be okay. It's like, no, a drug addict needs to avoid it absolutely completely. And so there may be certain foods, again, I'm not a big fan of depriving a whole segment. Okay? It's like we need to have a good relationship with food, and so a healthy relationship with food. But again, there are certain things that if it sets you off, the answer may be I've got to avoid this absolutely completely. All right, and then cravings are very, very real. Okay, the physiologic cravings are very real. And they usually, again, happen with very overly refined, highly refined foods. Again, they usually are high carb foods, cookies, breads, pastries, chips. Those are kind of some of the biggest trigger things. Okay, but these cravings are very, very real. They tend to be the most, they tend to peak really in the first few weeks of dieting. It's kind of like, gee, I'm fairly close in time to kind of I've gotten rid of these things or avoiding these things. So they tend to really peak in those first few weeks when we're starting kind of a new diet. They tend to slowly fade away as we get used to avoiding them. But again, it may take, potato chip, Lay's potato chip, one potato chip, and all of a sudden no one can eat just one. And so you have to be certainly careful with those. But cravings do tend to fade. And they do tend to peak during the first few weeks. Some people will truly get withdrawal symptoms. And this is very common with an overall carbohydrate withdrawal. Okay? And especially kind of immediately after surgery or immediately after changing a diet. Okay? Especially kind of going from a fairly high carbohydrate diet to now kind of down really low carbohydrate diet. People will go through withdrawal, and it's very, very real. And it can last for a couple days, but it can last for a couple of months, actually. So it's not like it goes away just really quickly. It might, but then it actually can last a significant amount of time. And typically, kind of almost the worse an addict, if you want to call it that, you were, it may last a longer period of time. But these kind of cravings tend to be accompanied by true physical feeling. I mean, headaches, fatigue, I feel shaky, I'm really irritable. Those are very, very real things that can occur. And they're typically not life-threatening or anything like that, but that doesn't make you feel better. Okay? They're often cravings, okay? And that's a little bit different than cravings that kind of come and go. Okay, because often cravings that come and go are truly related to blood sugar swings. Okay, and blood sugar swings, I get a blood sugar swing up. When as the blood sugar comes down, then I have more cravings. Okay, and that's very, very real. But if it's truly from what I call withdrawal, and I'm trying to avoid any of these blood sugar swings, and it's kind of as you're kind of going through withdrawal from that food, okay, these things are very real, can often last an extended period of time. Now, one thing that's actually been, a simple thing that's actually been shown to help is chromium. Chromium's a mineral. It's like taking calcium or magnesium or potassium. They're minerals, okay? But chromium's a mineral. You can buy it anywhere. Literally any pharmacy you can walk into and get chromium, just as easily as you can buy a calcium supplement. But chromium's a mineral. And subsequently, what chromium does, it tends to smooth over blood sugar swings, because often physiologic cravings are related to blood sugar swings. So chromium can help significantly with blood sugar swings. Now, kind of take that a little step further. It's not just go in and buy some chromium and start taking it. Typically on a bottle of chromium is that it'll take once a day as a supplement. which generally doesn't work well for cravings. Generally, you have to take it 3 times a day. Typically, take it shortly before your eating, your planned eating times. And you can take it multiple times, but generally you have to take it about 3 times a day for it to work fairly decently. Sometimes people come in, yeah, I started taking chromium, I take it once a day, and gee, it didn't help a lot. It's like, well, that's because you're kind of following the direction on the bottle. And that typically doesn't work well for cravings. Generally, you need to take it 3 times a day. And chromium is very safe. There's a limit to that statement. Could you overdose on chromium? Yeah, I'm sure you could. It's like just about any mineral you could, but you have to take massive doses, which I'm not recommending. All right, so that's kind of trigger foods. And for certain people, certain triggers, certain foods that may trigger your eating. The real answer to this, you may need to avoid that. Again, not a big fan of deprivation diets, but for certain things, it may have to be. All right, so shifting gears then to not trigger foods, but then trigger feelings. Okay, and these are kind of certain emotions that can be good or bad. So it could be really a high emotional high versus an emotional low that may then trigger a period of overeating. Okay, so trigger feelings that, and it may be stress, it may be anxiety, it may be anger, it may be sadness, loneliness. All these things can trigger overeating, and everybody's different. Some people, gee, I get sad and I don't want to eat. Or they get angry and I don't want to eat. Okay, but then it may give the opposite effect on many individuals. And so these feelings then can often set off an overeating, a tremendous overeating of, they're usually almost any available food. So it may not be quite as specific as that trigger food, as opposed to, gee, it was a certain exact food, even down to the brand. Sometimes that can trigger that. This is more of a generalized eating. And it often is it may have themes to it. Sweet, salty, crunchy, doughy, type of thing. So it often may be, you'll often know what I'm talking about there, but it's often then an overeating of a more generalized, larger not necessarily larger meaning more, but actually larger being a broader category there. And it's kind of more of what foods are available. Now, identifying, the real trick here is in identifying the emotion that actually sets this off. Which emotion is the key to kind of pulling the trigger there? Okay? One of the best ways to kind of sort that out is journaling. How many times do I talk about journaling? Just about, maybe not every single one of these webinars, but most webinars I might hit on something about journaling. Journaling is one of the best tools to figure out problem areas. And so journaling, not just what you're eating, what you're exercising, what you're drinking, but this is more the emotions that went along with the eating. Was it, if you're journaling what you're eating, hey, was it just time to eat? That's why I'm eating. Or is it, gee, I'm eating because I was happy, sad, angry, whatever it was. Okay. So journaling is one of the best ways to sort out any eating behavior problem. Okay. And I go back to that over and over and over and over again. Writing it down is very, very important. And trigger feelings. As opposed to the third one now, which is trigger environments, meaning that there's situations, or I get into this situation, or I get into this area, or this place. It may be a specific place that actually sets off eating. Okay, so it's really a specific situation or place that sets off an episode of overeating. It could be the movie theater. I go to the movie, I overeat on buttered popcorn. Okay, it could be the buffet. It's like, gee, I get involved in a buffet and I'm going to overeat. If any one of these single foods were served, not in a buffet style, but this was part of dinner, I wouldn't overeat so much. Could be attending a sporting event. Gee, every time I go to the baseball game, I've got to have peanuts and popcorn and Cracker Jack, right? Okay, so it's kind of that. It just they all go together. It fits well together. Or even more commonly, is it may be socializing with a specific group of family, friends, co-workers, whatever. It's when this group gets together, things tend to degenerate. And whether it be my neighborhood, dinner group, my best friends, then we get together for vacations. It's kind of a time frame then. So the overeating in these situations is set off by specific environment or specific situations. So to manage this, first you have to identify what's the situation. Okay, but you can probably easily do that. It typically isn't something you don't realize. You may realize it after the fact, but typically you've gone through this situation multiple times. It's not like, oh, this is a new situation. It's like, no, it's every time the family gets together for this, or every time we going to go out to the baseball game or the theater or whatever. This group of people, group of my friends, we get together and this is what happens. It typically shouldn't be a surprise. You can figure this out. So again, it typically is a specific environment, specific situation. So first you have to identify, what is that environment? What is that situation? What is that group that this happens to? Now, you could say, well, I'm just going to avoid that. Well, that's probably not the best answer. There are some situations that may work. It's like, okay, I'm never going to a baseball game again. Well, with COVID and all this stuff going on, and maybe we never will. I don't know. But, okay, typically avoidance of that situation doesn't work so well. It's not like I can avoid my family forever. I can avoid my best friends forever, or kind of the dinner group that I meet with. Okay, so avoidance will work. It's just probably not the best answer, and often really isn't possible. It may not be a feasible answer either. So then it's important then to develop strategies to minimize the overeating. What am I going to do instead? And it's really kind of identifying these hurdles, these, what trips me up. Okay. So, and then what can I do to get around those hurdles? What can I do differently? How am I going to set myself up for success? So it kind of takes a lot of planning. And then it takes practice. And it's not like, gee, it's going to work every time. Okay, it'd be nice if it worked every time. But reality is it's probably not. We're going to stumble no matter what, even under the best situations. Is that, yep, we're going to stumble, we're going to mess up. And it's like, but review that then. Review that, and then kind of what can I do differently next time? And so kind of we have to work on this, and we modify our plans accordingly then. All right. Now, often this has to do with, or have something to do with, willpower. And people often say, gee, I don't have any willpower. Well, that's not true at all. Everybody has willpower. So do I have willpower to overcome these cravings? Well, realize that cravings do tend to fade with time. They do. They tend to fade away with time. They're not so bad. Just even if there's something I loved, as time goes on, the longer you are away from that, then you don't tend to dwell on that so much. And so kind of the cravings do tend to fade with time. Just realize that will happen. So the part of the problem is that internal struggle with cravings, it does tend to lead to what I'll call emotional pain. It's like, yeah, this is hard. And sometimes emotional pain leads to indecision. That internal struggle will lead to that indecision. That's, I don't know, what am I going to do, right? And sometimes making that hard and fast no, that hard stop, no, I'm not going to do this, is that I'm not going to give in. And sometimes it takes literally saying it out loud. It's like, no, I'm not doing that. Okay? Part of that is, and this will go back to something I talk about all the time, is timing, meal timing, eating timing. Is that if it's not time to eat, if this isn't fitting into my meal time, it's like, I'm not eating. And that's a yes, no decision. There's no in between eating and not eating. You either are or you're not. Okay? So making that hard and fast rule, timing, can be very important. And that sometimes making that rule of yes, no is much easier to make than, well, I'll just have a little tiny bit. I'll just have a little taste. I'll have a little of whatever it is. Okay. Sometimes yes, no decisions, black, white decisions are much easier to make than kind of all the different shades of gray. Okay. So part of that is kind of developing that willpower muscle. Okay. Because willpower truly is like a muscle. The more you work at it, the stronger it gets. And just realize you have to work at it. And some people can do that very easily. Other people, it's hard. It's much, much harder, and they have to work on it, and it's a very slow evolution of that. And just realize that you're going to mess up. Okay? So again, willpower is not something that you do or don't have. Everybody has it. Okay? And we need to practice it, and it can be strengthened with time. Okay? Meal timing, again, can help. Okay, setting that, okay, here's my eating time. Now I'm not eating. And again, kind of meal timing has to do with kind of having those, the majority of any 24-hour day should be not eating. Okay? There should actually be only short periods of time that you're actually eating. If there are only short periods of time that you're actually eating, and if it's whatever it is falling outside of that eating time, I'm not eating then. Sometimes that yes-no situation is an easier decision. And again, willpower. Willpower is kind of takes that kind of a step further in that it is something that if we practice, it will get easier. You will get better at it. So it's not like, gee, I don't have any willpower. Yes, you do. Everybody does. It's not something we don't have. Because literally, if it were forced on you, if you were on the desert island and it was forced on you, it's like you could do it. It's like, no, I mean, no one's ever been knocked off by not eating for 6 hours or 8 hours or 12 hours or even 24 hours. No one's ever died from not eating for 24 hours. Okay. Now, water, yeah, in a couple of days you die. That is true. That's true. But for not eating, it's like, no, it's not even dying and starving to death is actually a real thing, but it takes months, long time. The point there is. Okay. All right, so strategies to help with improving willpower. And some of it is kind of just changing your mindset. Okay, part of that is be truthful with yourself. Okay. Is this craving, is it true hunger, or is it just a want? Okay. Often our true hunger may be time to eat. But also then really think about, is there another reason that you're eating? Gee, I'm emotional, I'm angry, I'm stressed, I'm happy, I'm lonely, I'm depressed, whatever it is. Okay, then what are the reasons there? But realize too that I've made a commitment. This is what I want to do. If you think about that long-term vision, we talked about that goal that's out there, that long-term vision. Is kind of picture yourself at goal, because this is a lifelong commitment, really. It's a long-term commitment. And as time goes on, if we commit kind of what we're doing here, eating healthier, being healthier, it gets easier. Okay? And then also kind of think about, we often don't ahead of time, but think about the aftermath of what if I give in to this craving? How am I going to feel? You may get that temporary high. It's like, gee, I had this Lay's potato chip and whatever it is, ate the whole bag. And so I'm saying, yeah, I felt good right when I was doing it. And then I feel terrible for multiple reasons. You physically may feel really bad for giving in there, but you also then emotionally in your mind is like, why did I do that? Well, I can't do anything, blah, 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 blah. And so subsequently that self-talk, that negative self-talk especially, will become more prominent there. So kind of imagine that aftermath and kind of replace the words of, gee, I can't do this. It's a decision that I'm not doing this. this. We make a decision. And so subsequently, and we have to live with our decisions. You always have a choice. Always. You always have a choice. And I chose to do this. And just own it. Okay, well then own it as well as what am I going to do differently? Okay, review your goals, that picture postcard vision that you have. Remind yourself of why you want to do this. If you had listed out your goals, wrote them all down, pull them out, review them. This is why I'm doing this. And if you can't kind of really do that, then you're always going to be at a really high risk of having this deteriorate and subsequently regaining all your weight back. It's subsequently something we need to really reevaluate and kind of work on forever. It's not like, gee, it's a temporary thing. Oh, as time goes on again, it does get easier. It doesn't go away. It does get easier. So continue kind of strategies to improve willpower. Habit changing techniques. Part of that is just take yourself out of the situation. Distance yourself from the food. Physically, distance yourself from whatever it is you're thinking about. If the bag of M&Ms is right there, the bag of Lay's potato chips is right there, physically distance yourself. It's like, literally, unless your arms are 20 feet long, move out of that room. Okay. Remove the food or remove yourself. I always encourage people, if you're having cravings, is drink something. Water is the best thing, really. Thirst is often mistaken for hunger. And your body will kind of give you more cravings. If you're thirsty, push the water. If you've had surgery, subsequently, then if you really start pushing the water, you're going to feel full. It's like, oh, okay, I'm full. I don't want anything right now. Now, that won't last very long with liquid, because liquids will go through this pretty easy. But still, okay, if you drink something, especially if you drink it faster than you usually do, you're going to feel full. Set a timer. Okay, it's kind of deep breathing. Set a timer and just kind of, okay, 5 minutes, I'll reevaluate this craving. If I can walk away, in 5 minutes, I'll think about it again. Geez, well, maybe I don't really want it. Okay. Do that a number of times. 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes. 5 minutes, anybody can do anything for 5 minutes, right? It's like, okay, well, do it for 5 more minutes. And do it for 5 more minutes. All of a sudden, gee, I don't have this craving anymore. Do things that'll distract yourself. Brush your teeth. Do you really want to eat something when you just brush your teeth? Do something simple like polish your nails. Dude, if you just put something on your nails, are you going to be then reaching into a bag of anything? Typically, you're not. Go for a walk. Exercise. Call a friend. Typically, hopefully you're not talking on the phone while you're eating and all that stuff. Take a shower. How many people eat in the shower? You do some. Practice a musical instrument. Okay, harmonica. Anybody can get a harmonica. Start playing it. You can't really eat while you're doing that. Whatever. The piano, the flute, whatever. Okay, practice a musical instrument. Take up a different thing. Do a specific chore. Go outside and work in the yard. Got my hands in the dirt. Typically not going to eat anything. I'm going to straighten my sock drawer. Whatever it is. Set yourself up a little chore. It doesn't have to take a whole length, a long period of time, but just kind of do something specific and then kind of maybe reevaluate that. Typically cravings go away. They fade. And these little activities can be very helpful of improving willpower. Again, practice. All right, food triggers there. So in summary then, food triggers are all around you. Okay, they're there, they hit us all the time. Learn to recognize them for what they are and develop the strategies to combat them. And it's very, very important to do this so you can kind of get to that, again, long-term weight loss goal, long-term picture postcard, this is where I want to be type of thing. All right. Obviously, if you think you need help or whatever, sit down and talk to one of the counselors. That's what they do. I'm not a counselor. I mean, basically, I can tell you need to do this, 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 and this. But how do you actually do that? I'm probably the wrong person to ask and kind of in this situation or whatever. Because everybody's got different situations. Okay, I can tell you, well, you need to do this if you're going to be successful. But how do you actually do it? That's where the counseling comes in. But if you have questions, just give us a yell here, go to our website, obviously get into the membership portal. I don't see any questions sitting out there, but do recommend get into the membership portal. It's a good way to just stay connected. We keep adding more and more things, not only these webinars, but a lot of menu and recipe ideas, a lot of just kind of weight loss tips there. Okay. All right, tune in each Tuesday, 12:15 for the next webinar. Watch your email for the invite and link. And remember, it's your life. Make it a healthy one. Have a good day, everyone. Take care.